Yes, yes, you are.
Welcome back to the Diplomacy Next podcast. Today I'm being joined by somebody who is a very special guest. She is Druti Panchal and she is actually pursuing her master's from University College London. And it has been long wait that I have been looking at her profile, and then finally it has happened at this moment. And I hope that this podcast turns out to be a very insightful one. Given the way she is placed, she actually studies, she pursues her master's from the University College London that I told you. And then the topic is important, the topic is relevant, and the topic is critically important for the strategic community across South Asia and across European strategic landscape. And then I'll start with one thing. First of all, I'd like to welcome you, Panchal, on this podcast. It's really an honor.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel delighted to be the part of this podcast today.
So, as a research analyst, how do you view the current global geopolitical setting when we talk about G20, when we talk about India-China relations, when we talk about India being, some of the analysts will term it as India is into the West camp. How do you, as a research analyst, look at this thing from the global governance, global geopolitical point of view?
Well, if you ask me about geopolitics is extremely dynamic. Like things turned around, thing changes over and out again. If you ask me especially about India in the current geopolitical scenario, I think India holds a very special and a strong position, knowing it is doing a lot progress in the international relations in terms of its relations with other countries, even if it is with the neighboring countries, even if it is in Africa or with United States, and well, it would be very interesting to know what it does in the future endeavor for the that matter. And it's an honor to have like G20 summit in India. I mean, it's um, really a matter of great honor for us. And yeah, that's what I
And
think
and
as
and tell us one
the
more
broad
thing.
scenario.
That is, I mean, that is when you look. See, we from India, like the vantage point from where I'm speaking, we look it as a festival of something it's a festival in its own right, a festival of democracy being celebrated all across, and then India's presidentship, for the G20. And only today, there was this New Delhi Declaration signed when the European Union leader was actually inducted into the G20. It was a special invitation sent down to them. But then, when you, as a research analyst, look at India-China relations, since China, I mean, the president from China he didn't attend the G20 summit in India. That happened only today on 9th of September. And how do you view it? Why do you see the current trajectory of India-China relations going?
Right. So to answer your question in that particular manner, date back to the India's and China's in history, like what happened in 1962, 1975, the India-China War. It have got a lot to do with the history of where the Tibet plays an extremely important factor, in my opinion. And the reason why China wouldn't be the part or was not being the part of the G20 summit currently, I believe it could be seen from the lot of prospects. The one prospect which I would be considering is, in my opinion, is that when the Galwan Valley incident happened, um, China claimed that India is focusing a lot on the boundaries rather than the trade, and they don't believe that's the right approach to the bilateral treaties and agreements between the India and China. They believe that that's the wrong approach which India have undertaken. They always believe, even if you go through their official statements, they have made the point that you should all they say that India should keep their boundary disputes separately through the trade. So that is the one major reason which I think is the approach of India which triggers China. Other than that, the bilateral agreements and treaties which India is signing with lots and lots of countries, not to mention but USA, Australia, Japan. is and the Quad, what Quad is doing in the Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean is one of the major reason as well, which China thinks like Asian NATO kind of formation, which is happening in the Asian Pacific region, is also to be blamed for the G20 summit where there was the absentee of China.
And you mentioned about this incident back in last couple of years. Things have not been good at the bilateral level between India and China. When we talk post Galwan scenario, as a research analyst, as somebody who's taking keen interest into India-China relations, uh, the India that currently China has got as its neighbor. Uh, do you think that the entire spectrum has changed? India can, punch about its weight to actually not let China go with its belligerence, go with its expansionism across land and sea. And also, in order to secure its borders, recently China released a map where it shows that a complete northeast, that is a territorial part of India, has been shown by the Chinese, by the Chinese government as part of China itself. And then India
Right.
also released its own map of where it has shown some of the parts of China to be part of India. So if this all thing has happened, I mean, back in BRICS last week, and then as of now in G20, why do you see that even the president of the USA has was a special invitee on this occasion? The nearness of China, the nearness of India and USA is directly proportional to wherever the relations are going between India and China. Do you see some sort of connectivity or some sort of relation between these two different things?
Okay. Yeah. So to start with, there are a lot of reports, like very credible sources, which says that China does have problem with USA and India's strategic partnership, whether it is with any prospect, and the major reason what China also claimed on in their paper is what India is doing. It is hedging China by using USA, and that is what they have proclaimed internationally on the international platforms. So yes, it is of due. There is a due importance to be given on the fact that India and USA's the relationship which they share does affect China. The most important reason, when I look from the US perspective, looking at this an entire conundrum, would be that since Asia is said to be the the one of the most progressive continent of the 21st century, and what it is going to happen, it is going to grow, how much it is going to grow in the upcoming years. It have grabbed the attention of a lot of countries, a lot of Western world. So from that perspective as well, USA see India as a very major important factor in order to tackle China. Because at the end of the day, when you see China, have always claimed that India is never a major threat to them. There are a lot of papers, lots and lot of papers, even the news articles from South China Morning Post and the People's Daily, which is like the centrally authorized the platforms, where they have claimed that India was never a threat, and whatever and other sources which says that whatever motto they have is, at the end of the day, like whatever policy is the way that they want to grow, that is for sure their prosperity is extremely important, but at the same time they want to outgrow US, if you see from one prospect. So at the end of the day, the direct relation is with the US, direct motto is the US. India can be a factor in that, probably.
And
So it
then
plays a
when
huge role.
when 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 we talk about what China didn't digest quite clearly was the chord grouping. Why do you see the current dynamics of chord going? I mean, there has been lots of furore around this chord grouping, and the strategic community across these countries have been looking quite positively at this entire grouping as a strategy. And can India use it as a strategy or as a forum against the Chinese expansionism in the sea and across the borders?
Right. So, firstly, China think that Quad grouping is like the Asian NATO. It claims the Quad to be an Asian NATO. Now, this also have a lot of ways to give an opinion. To start with, so quadrupling basically started between India and USA in 1993, if I'm not wrong, around that corner. And then in 2007, Australia joined. Japan became the member. There were a lot of maritime exercise which happened in the Pacific Ocean, the Arabian Ocean, South China Sea, and as far as we know, there have been a lot of naval exercises. The lot of reports which came out from the respective countries of the Quad, that is India, Australia, Japan, and USA, is that it is an important step to make sure that the route lines which are in these oceans, that is Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean, is free from anyone's dominance. It should be and at the same time to exercise and train their naval bases and the naval forces for that matter. So it plays a huge role, because if you consider this, and as per my analysis, if you consider, if there is a naval exercises going on in the Indian Ocean, you can see there is a Strait of Malacca, which is a supremely important strait when it comes to the exchanges which happen with China, of China with the other countries. Like 60% of the fuel and the important goods supply to China through this Strait of Malacca. So, from that perspective, this Quad could be extremely important factor in jeopardizing the China's role. Like there was this one incident which happened in Suez Canal. Like there was a ship which blocked a lot of. It was a small canal which was blocked by the ship, and there were a lot of ships which were not able to pass through, and the billions of trade losses was occurred during that time. So that is what can happen in Strait of Malacca. And for that matter, China is extremely, what can we say, the word, it has been intimidated by that particular fact, like what can Quad do, in my perspective. And that is the reason we can see this very famous pearl of strings. We know the One Belt Road initiative which China started, and whatever it have done in the Indian Ocean, where Indian experts have claimed that it have surrounded India from all the edges. It can be seen as a way or one aim of securing their own trade routes. Yeah.
And very specifically when we talk about this fact that China, by not by not allowing its by not coming to participate in the G20 grouping that happened this year in India, or is happening in India, and then also in the BRICS, at the BRICS sidelines, things haven't been, there is no breaking of the ice between India and China. When you look at the analysis made by the strategic analysts, uh, is it something that, some of the analysts will term it that China is isolating itself, given the fact that the West is all backing India. Apart from that, also China's internal domestic crisis when it comes to the CCP's extra surveillance of its citizens and, human rights record. Uh, is it China any which way getting isolated by not actively participating in the groupings where India has gotten the right to actually decide things?
Well, there could be this could be one of the reason. And as you see that China have always been some or the other way equipped with its domestic internal matters. There have always been internal problems in the China. And this uh, one aspect which I have noticed is, whenever there is domestic or internal consequences happening in China, what it does, it shifts or focuses their people's mind from the domestic problem to the international arena. If I give you the example of in that particular case, it has to be when Galwan Valley incident happened. Again, to go back, where India claimed that 20 of their soldiers sacrificed their life in the Galwan Valley clash. But that time we did not see any news coming as how many soldiers have sacrificed their life in China, like in this clashes. But there was this one paper which really source and which say cites that when there was a domestic problem in China, what they did it did is it they shared the list of the people, like four, I think there were four soldiers who sacrificed their life. They shared it on the international platform so that the rest of the world could know. So this could be the one way to see that how they shift the focus of their people from the domestic problem on the international platform, like international on the international platform. Yeah. So I think if you ask me about the absentee or the uh, no absentee of China in the G20 summit or the BRIC, there was a cold eye thingy, but I think there has to be something to do with China, India's approach, and that can be true that China would be too much into indulging with the domestic problems right now, whatever is happening in their own country. I don't have like expertise knowledge in this particular field, but that could be a one possible reason.
And when coming back to the entire Europe's geopolitics, especially after Russia-Ukraine war and then the energy crisis back in Europe, India played an active diplomatic role in order to not let Europe go bankrupt in the energy sector, given the dependence of entire Europe on the Russia's energy resources. Apart from that, why do you see that the Europe is looking at India? Are they kind of on the same page when it comes to countering China? Why do you see the European strategic thinking when they look at India as a power to reckon with?
Well, to start with, European Union. This was quoted by our foreign minister. He said that European Union think that they have got the supremacy when it comes to the global order, and every other country should learn from them how to practice global governance when it comes to European Union, because there were a lot of allegations made on India saying that they are like we are encouraging Russia by buying their crude oil. That time when the foreign minister said India's foreign minister said that even Europe is buying. Why don't we ask them the same question as we are allied to? So in that way, I don't see that European Union is following any lead of India, but the supreme or the most important thing which I consider in the international relations is the that everything works on the economy, like so the trades are important. It's very important to keep your country secured, and Europe would not be leading the India's path, but definitely there might be there is an important factor for the trade exchanges, for the bilateral treaties, for them to grow and for us to grow. So it worked both ways rather than following them is what you there is no any kind of following.
When you look back between India and China, especially after Galwan and then the downsliding of bilateral economic relations, India took a very tough stand and very aggressive stand on whatever happened in Galwan and the aggression. India has been raising this at the global level also, and the economic relations still, you can imagine the billions of dollars that's a bilateral trade worth of. Uh, I mean, has India been quite successful enough to be aggressive enough when it comes to bilateral economic ties or bilateral financial ties?
Well, so we did impose some economic sanctions. We did impose some banning of the apps, which did cost for a certain period of time to China with our trade relations. But there was this one report which came recently, which claimed that there is not much of a difference anymore right now. Like we have yet again our trade exchange with China have increased. Like it have increased um, a lot than what was before. Um, so it yes, I think from the Chinese perspective, as I have cleared before, they always think that they should keep the trade relations and the relation with and the problems on the border separate. It should not ever be mixed. But India have always claimed, even the defense minister of India claimed in one of the speech, saying that there is for us to grow, like for India and China's relation to grow, it's very important that we first settle our boundaries and all disputes, or else it's not gonna lead anywhere. So there is difference of opinion from both the sides, if you see what I'm trying to say. Like India is becoming aggressive. It is expanding its petrol routes on the in the Galwan region. There are a lot of infrastructure projects, vibrant villages initiatives in Arunachal Pradesh, for that matter, which China thinks to be extremely aggressive. That is to be very clear, because there are so many credible sources, there are so many newspapers, there are so many the text cited by the officials. Like I've gone through the text from the officials and the diplomats on their app known as Weibo. Like we have got Twitter, there is like the app known as Weibo in China, where they claim what India is doing, and they have explicitly claimed that yes, India is being extremely aggressive in their approach, and they have problem with our infrastructure development, they have problem with our petrol routes as there is an expansion, they have problem with DSDBO road, if you know, which is extremely parallel to the Ladakh region. So yeah, that is it.
And before we go into this, element of Pakistan and between India-China relations, one more thing I'd like to have your viewpoint upon is that where do you see the future trajectory of India-China relations going when it comes to economic relations, when it comes to diplomatic relations, when it comes to the border disputes, whatsoever there are, and where do you see them? Is there any glimmer of hope that analysts will forecast? But then down the line, I have the papers I go through, the research articles I go through. They all suggest one thing, that in the near future there is no possibility, even if both the countries at their own in their own respects, in their own capacities, have tried to reach out to each other. But then again, it comes to Chinese, the monopoly and the pedigree of being a largest production industry that it has. And they always tell that in just one system there cannot be two lines or two superpowers or two regional powers, when we say and talk about it. So where do you see
Right.
the future trajectory of the relations going?
Right. um well, I would like to answer this question by saying why it is not growing. For that matter, why is the current situation as well not very happening between India and China relations? So, first thing which I notice is the lack of communication and misinterpretation of the information between India and China. In my opinion, I think that is one of the biggest hurdle between India-China relations. I have seen a lot of reports, and honestly, I I think that the Indian media is also playing its own role to shape people's opinion of China. Honestly, I do appreciate and I do follow a lot of Indian media, Indian content, which is on the India-China relations. But when you go through a lot of papers and the reports, the reality is a bit different than what we have listened and heard. So what Indian media sometimes showcase is it makes people extremely aggressive of China. But from the Chinese end, they believe that India is the one who's trying to deter them, who's trying to be more aggressive. So I think there is a lot of difference in opinion. At the same time, there is a lot of difference in interpretation of the conversation. Uh, that is with the people, but at the same time, when it comes to the government, even with the government, I believe that there is no open and clear conversation on or the stress on the topic, which is extremely important to be given. um, there were some reports which says that there is when there was 1962 war, and when there were a lot of wars at that particular time, those days there was the exchange of the telegrams. If you have seen, there was exchange of telegrams happening between India and China, which also claims that there was a lot of miscommunication between these two countries. So the misunderstanding dilemma postbacks from the from very long time when it comes to the shape of India China's relations in future. Until and unless this problems or this particular things are not solved, yes, I don't think there is a possibility of our relation getting better with China anytime soon. But at the same time, saying that, I believe that the trade is extreme. It is ultimately gonna grow with China because it is gonna grow for if it is not for some other things, then it would be for some or the other um, or other goods, because as you have seen, India is also a manufacturing hub right now, and it too needs a lot of raw material, which is extremely cheaper in China. So it's not gonna be, like um, it is not gonna be like from tomorrow it is gonna shut and we are done, because
But then
our trade with China is something the other way around.
when you talk about the media thing in India, but then down the line this pessimism of
Sorry,
Indians,
I can't hear you.
am I audible?
Hello?
Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah,
So my thing is that when you talk about Indian media being not too much truthful in portraying the facts on ground between India and China in the right way, that has shaped the strategic community in India that would otherwise go in sport of having good relations with China. All the apprehensions have been, they have inevitably turned true. The reason being that China in the Galwan region, China in the northeast region, China with the Tibet issue, the Tibet dispute, and then also Chinese penetration and Chinese expansionism, and also China's support to countries that otherwise have no good relations with India, especially the country like Pakistan that we are going to address after this. So my thing is, my understanding as a student or as a researcher of international relations would be that the media is showing the things in the right way. The reason is that uh, China cannot be trusted on this thing. The thing is that they
of
have
course.
time and again it's a historical thing. I mean, no matter there is an agreement between India and China, that's border and tranquility agreement, where you will see that relations are the borders being quite peaceful. But down the line after Galwan and the kind of treatment that was meted out to India by China and its officials across the globe at the global level, at the global forums, hasn't like gone well with the current dispensation in India because they speak the language of equality. They won't say that there is any. They always believe that the multipolar order or the multipolar multilateral world will benefit everybody when it comes to democracy and freedom of pre trade across the sea routes, across the continents. It must be free, it must be transparent. And given the way there is a collaboration and the consensus between the democracies of the world that China has to make certain reforms on its human rights track record and other things. But then to each his own. My last thing will be about the element of Pakistan in between this India and China relations. Where do you see that it's happening,
Right,
given the fact that Pakistan's economy has been tanking, there are landmines across its social political fault lines, given the civil war like situation that's haunting the neighbors
right,
even. The CPAC that they termed that down the line the relation between China and Pakistan is the sweeter than honey and deeper than oceans. So that's not happening. I mean, Chinese engineers have been targeted, the abysmal record of Pakistan's religious minorities, and apart from that, border issues with Afghanistan. Uh, why do you see what do you make of this entire trio between India and Pakistan, India and China, and Pakistan and India?
right. So, yeah, to talk on that, first I would like to say that you were absolutely right saying that China couldn't be trusted. When I say that, I want to exclaim that when it comes to like the border issues, yes, there is a lot of incursion on the borders where they have trespass. There is a lot of transgression from their side, and that is absolutely right. And well, at the same time, And India media have done extremely great job by showing like what has happened and what is the reason, for sure. That's, there is no doubt about it. What I'm trying to say is there is a lot of different narratives from both the sides when it comes to Indian media and when it comes to Chinese media, which do not align. Is that what was I was saying? So it becomes different for the analysts and the researchers who does research, you know, like you don't know which narrative or which story is to be believed. And when it comes to Pakistan, well, there is a huge one, you know, a, a heck of a story when it comes to their relations, because there were a lot of narratives which says that even China helped Pakistan in making the nuclear weapon, and it is still helping Pakistan to develop missiles, and the that is some way to counter or maintain the balance with India, is what China is doing. Um, there was this one report where China blames India to, you know, have broken a lot of treaties. But I just have one question to ask, like, why would someone, China have signed NPT treaty, which says that it wouldn't share nuclear designs or technology to any other countries in 1993. But at the same time, there are documents which are archived in the United States departmental um, centers, like the Wilson Churchill Center. Then there is a National Archive, which says that China have helped Pakistan in building nuclear weapons. So right after India have tested its nuclear weapon capabilities in 1998. So this pretty much says lot about India, sorry, Pakistan and China's relation to start with. It reflects what Pakistan is for in India-China relation, for that matter as well. It plays an extremely important factor to deter India from both the fronts. So when I was doing my project right now on my thesis, where I also showed how Pakistan play an important role, China time and again uses Pakistan so that it could counter from both the fronts. If you see from the Kashmir side and from this front, Pakistan also stands an extremely important factor for China because of its strategic location. First and foremost, it is the neighbor to India again. Secondly, it has one of the deepest port of in the world, which is the Gwadar port. So the CPEC project, which you see, the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which connects China to the to Gwadar port, lying the railway lines to the Xinjiang area of China. This is gonna play a strategic importance to China through the Gwadar port to the Arabian countries for the oil trade. So they are kind of shifting their vulnerability which they have in the Strait of Malacca through their ports and through their BRI projects connecting CPEC from China to rest of the world. So from that matter, Pakistan does play an important role for them, for their economic, for Chinese economic gains, and for their um, in their strategic policies to shape themselves in the future.
Now that I'll wrap it up because we are just 30 minutes short of this conclusion. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll be looking forward to see you again on the same topic or maybe some other topic. Thank you so much that you have joined us. Have a splendid evening.
Thank you.